Before this video begins, I just want to clarify that reincarnation is essentially the belief that after you die, you're going to come back in someone else's body, so your soul is going to be reborn in another person's body. It's essentially the belief that, you'll have a second life and a third life and a fourth life, and, you'll keep coming back in this world with multiple lives, so second life, third life, etc., etc. There are some different ideas, slightly different variants of how people believe it's going to happen, but essentially it's this idea that you'll have a second life, a third life, etc., etc., fourth, fifth, on and on. Assalamu alaikum. The doctrine of reincarnation is an extremely popular belief amongst the pagan religions of the world. Today we see it a lot with Hinduism. They believe, of course, in reincarnation, and reincarnation is a doctrine which is very different to what we get when we look at the traditions of the prophets, who themselves believed not in reincarnation, but rather in a resurrection of the dead at the end of times. Now, Jews claim to be the followers of the prophets, but they ended up adopting the doctrine of reincarnation from the pagans. So we find traditionally some authors, some rabbinic scholars, rabbis I should say, mentioned the belief in reincarnation, and we see it explicitly stated within the Kabbalah. So the foundational text of Kabbalah is the Zohar. As you can see here, it is the foundational work in the literature of Jewish mystical thought known as Kabbalah. So it is the main text of the Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is considered by Jews to be a part of the oral Torah, which was transmitted to Moses at Sinai, as they claim, or at least that is their claim. So here you can see, for example, Aish.com mentions that Kabbalah is oral Torah. So as they say here, Moses himself received the oral tradition from God himself at Sinai, which was called Kabbalah. So a part of the oral Torah, according to them, was Kabbalah, and as I showed you initially, the foundational text in the literature of Jewish mystical thought, known as Kabbalah, is what? The Zohar, right? This is written under the Zohar. So here we see another Jewish website confirming Zohar is oral Torah. As they write in their article, The Zohar's Mysterious Origins, Jewish mystical teachings were always an integral part of the oral law and were transmitted together with the rest of the oral law by Moses to Joshua, etc., etc. So they believe the Zohar and the Kabbalah, of course, again, Kabbalah being the foundational text of the Zohar, is oral Torah that God revealed to Moses at Sinai. Here's a popular Rabbi Tovia Singer, confirming the belief in the Zohar and Kabbalah for anyone who doubts it. So here is a video from him about that if you want to check it out. Wikipedia writes, under reincarnation, reincarnation is a central tenet of the Indian religions, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, and most varieties of paganism. So reincarnation is a central tenet of the Indian religions, as well as most varieties of paganism. So it is a very pagan belief system, yet it finds its way into Judaism, which claims to be following the prophets, whereas in reality it is not. Here's what the Zohar writes. So this is the Pritzker edition, volume 4 in the PDF. It's page 282. Fourth figure, this is the figure of a person constantly poised to be mended for mystery of the past. This one appears in the sight of the wise-hearted in the image of an eagle. That spirit of his is a weak spirit. This one does not display protruding letters on his face, since these vanished from him, sinking at another time previously withdrawn from him, so they do not protrude. Of course, this is Zohar, so it's a very mystical text. It's hard to follow in that sense. You really have to know what's going on to get what's being said here, right? It continues by saying, okay, how can you identify these people? His eyes do not sparkle when he is joyful, nor when he cuts the hair on his head and trims his beard, etc., etc. So, of course, because the Zohar is so mystical and it was written in the sort of mystical language that's difficult to understand, it was sort of written as a code that you had to sort of decipher. let's just go straight to the commentary to see what this means. As Daniel C. Matt writes in the footnote, commentary, to poise to be mended for mystery of the past. This means that this person, so the Zohar is discussing certain persons, and it mentions this type of person, and it says this person has been reincarnated to mend his misdeeds in an earlier lifetime. His spirit is weakened, and no letters appear on his face, having vanished previously. His face assumes the form of an eagle's face, visible only to the eyes of the wise. Then he mentions on reincarnation in Kabbalah. See Bahir 135, 195, Zohar 1, 131a, 186b, 293, 239a, 291b, 94b through 114a, Pasim 37a, 8, 182b, etc. So you can see here a bunch of other references are listed. The point is there are many references to reincarnation, the belief of reincarnation in the Zohar and in the Kabbalah. And then, so they say, the footnotes for 124, 125, his secret, how he can be recognized. So, since no letters appear on his face, and we see, therefore, the secret mentioned, his eyes do not sparkle when he is joyful, nor when he cuts the hair on his head and trims his beard. So this is how you identify who is a person who's been reincarnated. 125 mentions, I praise the dead. It's at the end here. The mystery of this one, I praise the dead who have already died more than the living who are still alive. As for seed of David, the secret of the Lord is for those who revere him. To them he reveals his covenant. So under 125, Daniel Matt comments, I praise the dead, apparently understood to mean I praise the dead who have already died and have no need of further reincarnation more than the living who are still alive in reincarnated form. So reincarnation being mentioned. Here's another reference in the Zohar, and we'll get to some websites which confirm this, etc. in a moment. Further, she bore him Phineas. These were the heads. Loss of the heads of the Levites was found in him. Whereas they diminished and were burned, he fulfilled, gaining their priesthood. Both of their potfuls were contained within him. Loss of the heads of the Levites was found in him. Who are they? Nadab and Abihu. They separated the sign of covenant from its place, and he came and united them. Therefore, the inheritance of both of them was given to him. Here is mentioned what would happen later. So again, this is also in volume 4. On the PDF, it's page 81. As you can see here, the footnote for this is 103. So this is the commentary. And at the top, you can see this is from volume 4 of the Pritzker edition. Daniel C. Matt writes, what is the meaning of loss of the heads of the Levites? According to this alternative interpretation, the plural expression, these are the heads, refers to two prominent Levitical priests and sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, who were later killed by divine fire because they brought forward alien fire before the Lord. According to Rabbi Aha, their improper cultic act diminished or ruined the union of the divine couple, separating Yesod from Shekhinah. Their wandering souls, however, were reincarnated or impregnated in their nephew Phineas, fueling his zeal at Shittim. So their loss was recovered in him. He reunited the divine couple and inherited the priesthood of Aaron's two sons. So you see here the mention that their wandering souls, however, were reincarnated in their nephew Phineas. So reincarnation being discussed casually in the Zohar. So then Daniel C. Matt, again, volume 4, page 553, gives some other references. He says, on childlessness and reincarnation, see volume 3, page 137, number 331. On the reincarnation of Nadab and Abihu's soul in Phineas, see Zohar 357, 8 to B, 61b, 213, A to B, 217a. So this is also where it's mentioned that they were reincarnated in Phineas. One of the passages we just read was this, but there are many other passages which prove this, which is why Daniel C. Matt obviously explains it like this, right? Because that is what it means. On this particular type of usually temporary reincarnation known as Ibor, impregnation, see Sholem Kabbalah 348 to 49, on Phineas inheriting. Okay, so point here is he gives us some more references. from which we can check the Kabbalah believing in reincarnation. Michael Hoffman writes on page 242, Judaism Discovered. He quotes Shulchan Aruch Haran, Tilchos Talmud Torah 1:4. So of course I'm butchering the Hebrew most likely, but you see here it's mentioned that the sages of the true wisdom teach that every Jewish soul must reincarnate many times until it has fulfilled all the 613 mitzvos in action, speech, and thought. The 613 mitzvos are the 613 commandments they believe they have to keep. So Jews are reincarnated over and over again until they can fulfill all the commandments. Of course, this is very famous in Hinduism and these types of beliefs. Chabad.org writes under Judaism and reincarnation. Kabbalah on Judaism and reincarnation. The Holy Ari explained, and again this is a Jewish website, they explained, the Holy Ari explained it most simply. Every Jew must fulfill all 613 mitzvot, and if he doesn't succeed in one lifetime, he comes back again and again until he finishes. For this reason, events in a person's life may lead him towards certain places, encounters, etc. in ways that may or may not make sense. Divine Providence provides each person with the opportunities he needs to fulfill those particular mitzvot necessary for the perfection of his soul. But the responsibility lies with us. At the actual moment of decision in any given situation, the choice is ours. So there's a Jewish website confirming that as well. So we saw it in the Zohar. We saw it quoted, a reference being quoted by Michael Hoffman of a rabbi explaining it. We saw it in Chabad.org. And also Chabad writes that Ramban, one of the greatest commentators on the Torah, this is Ramban, not Rambam, it's Ramban, okay? He hints several times that reincarnation is the key to penetrating the deep mysteries involved in the mitzvah of Yibum, the obligation of the brother of a childless deceased man to marry the widow. In his explanation of Genesis 38:8, he insists that Yehuda and his sons were aware of the secret reincarnation and that this was a major factor in their respective attitudes towards Tamar. And there are many other rabbis who mentioned reincarnation as well. But here Ramban, one of the greatest commentators, is confirming that. Gilgul, Wikipedia writes under it, the topic Gilgul. In Kabbalistic interpretation, each Jewish soul is reincarnated enough times only in order to fulfill each of the 613 mitzvot, or commandments. Aish.com writes under Why Reincarnation by Rabbi Pinchas Whiston. I guess I might be butchering the name. So yes, reincarnation is a Jewish concept with a very long Jewish tradition. So now that we've clearly established that reincarnation is a part of Judaism, and in the Kabbalah the reincarnation is in many forms, one of the forms being you're reincarnated over and over and over again. A Jew is reincarnated over and over and over again, brought to life over and over and over again until they can fulfill their commandments, all 613 commandments. Now let's go here. Britannica, the Encyclopedia of Britannica writes, in Hinduism, the process of birth and rebirth, which is what reincarnation is, i.e. transmigration of souls, is endless until one achieves moksha, or liberation, I should say. Moksha, or liberation, which literally means release from that process. Moksha is achieved when one realizes that the eternal core of the individual, Atman, and the absolute reality, Brahman, are one. So in Hinduism as well, you're reincarnated over and over and over again until you gain perfection, which is what we find in the Kabbalah as well. Very different from the tradition of the prophets. Many times in the Bible, it's also mentioned that reincarnation does not exist. Psalm 78, yet he was merciful, he forgave their iniquities and did not destroy them. Time after time he restrained his anger, and he did not stir up his full wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a passing breeze that does not return. So human beings are what? They're just flesh, a passing breeze, meaning a short life that does not return. So once you die, that's it. You're not returning. That's what the Psalms say. Job 7:9, as a cloud vanishes and is gone, so one who goes down to the grave does not return. There is no such thing as reincarnation, according to Tanakh. Allah said in the Quran, حتى إذا جاء أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعون. When death approaches any of them, they cry, my Lord, let me go back. لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. So I may do good in what I left behind. Never! It is only a useless appeal they make, and there is a barrier behind them until the day they are resurrected. فإذا نفخ في الصور فلا أنسى بينهم يومئذ ولا يتساءلون. Then when the trumpet will be blown, there will be no kinship between them on that day, nor will they even care to ask about one another. So there is no reincarnation, rather there is resurrection. فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. As for those whose scale is heavy with good deeds, it is they who will be successful. ومن خفت موازينه فأولئك الذين خسروا أنفسهم في جهنم خالدون. But those whose scale is light, they will have doomed themselves, staying in hell forever. So once you die, that's it. You're not going to have a second chance to come and have a do-over at this life, and this time try and be righteous. When you die, that's it. You're not coming back. There's no second chance for you to become righteous this time. Your deeds are set, they're sealed, and then you're going to face judgment in front of God, and perhaps He will pardon you if you believed, and if you did not, then you will have a humiliating punishment, and there will be no way for you to come back and try at life again, that maybe this time you'll be righteous. There's no such a thing. There's just one chance. You got one chance. There's no such thing as, oh, let me try again, and this time I'll keep the commandments. No, it's one and done.